Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Jacob in Wisconsin. We're live here in Tennessee, ready to talk some Packers, talk a little Matt LaFleur, a little game planning, X's and O's episode. We'll talk a little Jordan Love. Got a lot of stuff on the schedule here tonight. Jacob, how you doing up there, big dog?
Man, I'm doing good. It finally had a little bit of a relapse of spring. We went from like winter right into summer, and now we're sitting at a balmy 60-ish degrees. It's been rainy and cloudy, so I'm happy about that because I like that. That's my type of weather.
Got you, man. Yeah, we're a little crazy down here as we had some bad storms roll through Tennessee and Kentucky, and I just want to say thoughts and prayers out to everybody in Kentucky. Last I'd heard, unfortunately, the death toll was up to 27, I think. It was some pretty nasty storms that rolled through. So obviously prayers out to everybody affected there. We're good here, but now we're sitting in the 80s. You know, we got kind of that mugginess, and it's supposed to get down in the 40s next week. So it's just, you know how it is, Jacob. We'll be running around sniffling, losing our voice and all that stuff for the next month and a half until everything settles in. So, but anyway, we got a lot of stuff we want to get into, so let's waste no time. I appreciate everybody in the chat. I see it filling up. Hopefully everybody's had an awesome weekend so far on this glorious May the 17th. May is on. I mean, we're going to blink. May is going to be gone. And we're going to be into, the mandatory mini camps in June. Next thing you know, it'll be training camp, and we'll be talking preseason. It's going to be here in the blink of an eye. But Jacob, you and Emilio have been talking about a recent podcast, some stuff that you had heard on Jordan Love, and kind of the hidden success, or maybe a little bit deeper dive than most people have looked into how Jordan Love played in 2024. So why don't we lead off with that, man? What did you guys uncover? Kind of what sticks out to you? Just tell everybody what you and Emilio were talking about, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I want to absolutely give a shout out to where we got this information. If you guys are listening or need to listen to a podcast, especially over the weekend when a lot of times you don't have a lot of new stuff to listen to, go back, find the Athletic Football Podcast. It's a great podcast. I listen to it almost every single day that they put one out. It's hosted by a gentleman named Robert Mays and Drew Clausen. And I just think they do a really good job covering the NFL in general. And every now and then they'll do a deep dive segment where they really look at the numbers and kind of dissect a certain team or a certain player. And they decided to go with about a 30-minute segment in this last episode. I believe it dropped Thursday. It's, again, the Athletic Podcast. That segment was called, or the episode was called Lingering Questions Going into the 2025 season. And the big lingering question was, what is Jordan Love? What was he in the last year, but specifically the last year? Did he take a step up? Did he take a step back? And what do they project him like in the future? And I got to tell you, it was a very interesting episode. Me and Emilio both listened to it in different ways. I was joking around because listening to the podcast, here I am taking all these notes. I re-listened to it many times, trying to kind of key in on some key points and some stats. And here I looked back, and Emilio had listened to it before I even did, and sent a very good screenshot of kind of some highlights that he thought were interesting, and I agree completely. So I don't honestly even know where to start because there's so much information in here, but I'll just maybe take a stab at it and throw some stats out there, and then we can maybe take a step back and look at what those stats mean. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me, man.
All right, cool. So, and again, like Clayton said, it's maybe the hidden good season that we saw out of Jordan Love. Now, when I read off some of these stats, you have to put the asterisk that he played hurt most of this year, and most of that injury was in that lower body, which completely limited his ability to rush, move out of the pocket, scramble, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to start with a stat that absolutely blew my mind. That Jordan Love last year, his scramble percentage, this is over the last 2 years, guys. Over the last 2 years, his quarterback scramble percentage rate ranks 38th in the league. Just before him is Jameis Winston. Right behind him is Jacoby Brissett. Now, I don't have to tell you that that's not good, right? And he specifically even mentioned that at the end of the year, apparently when he was talking to the guys from the Athletic Podcast, and he immediately said, I needed to run more this year. I did not help our quarterback, our team with the way that I ran quarterback and couldn't run the ball, sort of thing. So that to me was an absolute shock, because when you look at Jordan Love, we're not saying he's, a 10 RAS, but the guy's athletic. They even made the argument, and you guys, I'd love to hear in the chat, They compared Jordan Love is much more athletic than a Pat Mahomes, but Pat Mahomes is a much better scrambler than probably any other quarterback other than maybe Lamar that's on the planet right now. So I guess we saw glimpses of what Jordan Love can do with his legs, but they kind of made the argument that he has more of that Brett Favre, where he doesn't want to take the check down. He doesn't want to scramble. He'd rather force the ball. We see it even with like that Rams pass. It's triple coverage. He's rather just, let's throw it up. Let's give it up there. I'd like to ask you, Clay, would you like to see him take the check down more? Would you like to see him throw it away more? Or do you like the type of player? Do you like the type of talent that he is and just accept the fact that we're going to get some flaws with the way that Jordan Love plays football?
Yeah. The answer is yes. And here's what I mean by that is everything is situational. As Pat McAfee says, situations are situational, right? Like it depends on where you're at in the game. It depends on what the score is. It depends on, the team you're playing. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? All those things come into factor there. So for me, it's not just as simple as, and not that you're saying this, Jake, I'm just kind of thinking it through. It's not as simple as saying, I want him to push the ball down the field more. Or it's not as simple as saying, I want him to check down more. It's every play is different. We're going to talk some play diagram here in a minute. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the whole theme of the show is going to be kind of X's and O's based, that type of thing. So like, for example, if you're in a 3rd and 7 situation, it's a tie ball game, right? I don't want Jordan forcing the ball down the field. If you've got a check down, take it, right? Now, go back to the Eagles game where you're down a couple of score and a half, maybe, 10 points, whatever it was, 14 points, and nothing is kind of working for your offense, and you get a one-on-one matchup with Dontavion Wicks, and I can't remember who the corner was, and ended up intercepting the ball on the outside. I agree with that shot there. When he threw that interception, I said, good decision. Give your guy a chance there. And Dontavion Wicks got to do a better job of fighting for that ball. In that specific situation in the game, what we call the game flow aspect of calling the game and making decisions as a quarterback or a head coach is you've got to decide, all right, what's best for the game plan at the specific moment. It might be something where you're leading by 3 and the opposing offense has been absolute cheeks all day. You know what? Take the check down. Make them convince you they can beat you type thing. And that's why, I'm a little more, you guys will hear me say middle eight all season long. And the reason being is because if you protect that middle 8, you control the momentum of the game. Like, for instance, if you go back and watch the game where the Packers lost to Chicago, horrible decision before halftime by Matt LaFleur. He got too aggressive. Now, it's easy to just roast for someone like me to be the boring fan I am, to roast Matt LaFleur in that situation. But there's way more fans that go, I want us to be aggressive. I want us to put the throttle down. I look at it totally different. It's like control the middle 8, win the turnover differential, put yourself in a position that if it takes the last drive of the game to win the ball game, you're in the game. And that's why I kind of subscribe to the whole approach of make sure you're in every game as opposed to getting too cute, too flashy, and trying to bomb the ball deep all the time. It doesn't mean you don't take it when it's there. And a big misconception about the West Coast offense from the day it was founded, when it actually should have been called the Midwest offense, with Bill Walsh created it on a weaker arm quarterback in Cincinnati when he was the OC there. Way back in the 80s, actually the late 70s, I believe. The West Coast offense has a shot on just about every call, right? People think it's just check down. No, you check down when it calls for it. But just about every play call, there's a shot on that play that if they show the right coverage, bomber deep. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but to me, it's situational. Is how I would answer.
No, that totally does. And just so you guys know, and like Holmes says, it makes me mad that some fans seem to doubt Jay Love 10. He's a very good quarterback. I'm starting with more of the negative, quote unquote, negative stats. You'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm going to lean back towards that way to kind of highlight that even with the injury, I think we're sleeping on how well he really did. Just to bounce off of what Clayton said there, though, the Packers last year were 23rd in check down throws, and then they graded as a check down throw was within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage or 2.75 seconds from the snap is basically how they categorize the check down. Even with that metric there, 8 quarterbacks obviously were higher than Jordan Love there, but some of the quarterbacks that were ranked below him in that metric were Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen, and Jaden Daniels. Now, I love the point the guy made. He goes, well, what do they all have in common? The guy says, well, they are the check down. Like, they don't need to look for another running back because they can scramble. They can get themselves out of that situation.
And that's what we call the 6-back offense. That's what we call the 6-back offense.
Exactly. And so it just kind of did maybe highlight certain areas where Jordan Love's game, when it does improve, because I really do think it will, because again, this season, his injuries, which were many and multiple, most of them had to do with his lower body. He knew that. I mean, you watched him. He was a kind of a shell of himself as far as, he reminded me of that game when Aaron Rodgers went out with the knee and he came back in, and yeah, he's playing, but you could tell he's ginger. He's not planting. He's not stepping back fully. He's not completely throwing into each throw. That's how Jordan Love played all year. And he played so kind of skittish because I believe he knew that the season had to do whether or not he stayed in the game in many ways. And I don't think he was willing to sacrifice his body in ways that I think he normally would want to play. So that's all I'll say. And now we'll shift it maybe towards some of this, the stats that are really impressive. I will say one more dark thing is even in week 11 to week 17, when he was quote unquote on, that was probably his best stretch of the year. He still had a worse scramble rate than Tua Tagovailoa, which, if you guys know anything about it, I mean, Tua is consistently towards the bottom of that. So that is definitely a massive, massive area of improvement that I think is going to happen, even if he doesn't intentionally focus on it, just from him being healthy. So going forward, then this is where I'll look back at Emilio's notes. The Packers offense last year, 3rd in passing DVOA. They were 12th in passing success rate. They had definitely a little bit of volatility, as he notes here, and that was, again, has to do with a lot of the inconsistency from the injuries. The drop pass rate was unbelievably large for the Packers wide receivers, the most in the league, and I think they did it by a lot from number 1 to number 2. I think they even had like 5 more drops than the next player. I mean, they were pathetic. But here's the next greatest thing: the 3rd highest explosive pass rate in the league, second only to the Ravens and the Lions, which I thought was unbelievable. 28 in third down success rate, 26th in EPA per play on third down, but in 2023 they were 6th and 6th in both of those percentages. So basically on first and second down, we were able to move the ball quite easily, almost to the point where we were one of the best in the league. As soon as we hit that third down, because of the drops, we absolutely shot ourselves in the foot. It was just untenable, and we were so good. And like I said, in 2023 we're 6th and ranked 6th in both of those different metrics. And then we were also 6th in pass success rate and EPA per play drop back on early downs. Like I said, the first and second downs we were money, and I remember watching that. The game just seemed like it would stall at random times, and we didn't quite understand as to why. And
I want to say this, Jake, I want to roast myself for a second. I keep track of first down incompletions. They drive me absolutely freaking crazy, because when you're playing 2nd and 10 as opposed to 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 6, you're shooting yourself in the foot. However, statistically speaking, first down is the most successful down to pass on. So it's like that love-hate relationship. I didn't mean to cut you off, but as you said that, I always get frustrated, but I have to remind myself that is the best down to pass on.
Yep. And then we were dealing with a lot of 40% man on third down, and Jordan Love really struggled against zero coverage, which I guess I never really put that together. Can you explain real quick to what zero coverage is to people that maybe when they hear that doesn't really
absolutely
pop off the screen for them?
You'll hear terms like cover 2, cover 1, cover 4, cover 6, cover 9, cover 3, all these different type of coverages, right? I like to specify man if it's man. So like cover 1 man, when you say cover 1 man, that means you've got 1 deep safety, somebody playing deep post, right? And everybody's man across the board, man coverage, okay? When you say cover 2, you have to specify cover 2 zone or cover 2 man, meaning 2 deep safeties with deep half responsibilities and man coverage across the board underneath. With cover 2 zone, you've got 2 deep half responsibilities and you got 5 underneath, playing, curl flat, hook curl, all that stuff underneath. When you say cover zero means all out blitz, meaning there is you'll hear me refer to it as goose. Like when I was coming up learning football and learning from different coaches, they would call it goose, meaning goose egg. There's nothing up top. It's just straight man coverage. There's no safety help up top whatsoever. Now, typically what that means is they're firing a blitz from somewhere. And a lot of times what they'll do is play press man coverage, jam your guys at the line because they think that the blitz can hit home. So when you say cover 0, what that means is nobody deep. It's man coverage across the board. It's typically you can take a shot, but your quarterback's probably going to get smacked in the mouth. And some defenses will play cover 0 from a run blitz standpoint. Like they're doing it to stop the run first and foremost, to make sure that you got one hat in every gap across the board. But that's what cover 0 is.
Yep. Perfect. So, and that kind of just rounded out as far as what they said with stats, but then they did want to talk about how Jordan Love is a unique type of quarterback where he is going to play the way he's going to play. They reference kind of how has a little bit of that Brett Favre in him. And they said, there's certain things that you maybe won't be able to just coach out of him, but there's certain things you just can't coach into him. And I believe it was Robert Mays kind of said, he goes, he's just one of those quarterbacks that 3 out of 4 times he'll make a great decision. And then that 4th time you're biting your cheek, you're biting your lip, you're scratching your head. But even then, half and half of the time, like with that the Rams throw, you see a flash of greatness. And he said, he goes, I don't want to take that away from him. I don't want to coach that out of him. Mm-hmm. And you have to take the good with the bad. And I think there is way more good than with the bad. They also went on to highlight that he played with an offensive line that was a little bit suspect, which if you have a quarterback that's hurt, trying to not, scramble around, obviously that's going to lead to some problems. They definitely highlighted how the right guard position got a little bit weak as this year went on. And then they highlighted how when they lost Elton Jenkins, it was basically game over. And one thing which kind of made myself perk up a little bit, and I wanted to critique it and push back, but I wanted to get your say on it. I believe it was Drew Clausen. He said, I love Zach Tom. Zach Tom seems like an all-pro player. He says he looks like a Pro Bowler till he faces one. Mm-hmm. And I went, damn, that's a critique.
What that tells you is he is a very good to great offensive lineman. Not now PFF. If all you do is look at PFF, you go, he's elite. He's elite. This is what I think Adam Stenovich and Luke Butkus were talking about at the pressers this week. And I heard Jason Wilde and Mark Tauscher talking about it as well. Tauscher and Bulaga broke down the tape. He did not play well at the end of the year. Zach Tom did. And that's why I think you're going to see that number kind of drop a little lower than what the elite tackles are getting paid, because you're only worth your most recent games, right? I want Zach Tom to be on this team for the future. I want to make sure I'm very crystal clear on that. However, what you just said is 100% spot on. Like when he goes up against elite talent, he doesn't erase that elite talent. It's not like he folds up and plays horrible, but when you're going to pay somebody top 3, top 5 tackle money, they damn sure better be able to stop somebody that's top 3, top 5 at the position across from them, whether it's a 3 tech, a 4 5 tech, or even a wide 9 edge defender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it wasn't like, it was basically exactly what you said. He said that Zach Tom is a very good tackle, very serviceable, that most teams would want as their starting guy. It's just like you said, when he goes against the Max Crosbys, enter very good pass rusher here. He did. I mean, they said that, who was it that the linebacker Nolan Smith from Philly ate his lunch that whole game, just kind of and you could see that it was something that they're, and again, the whole point of this segment for me and for Clay and for the Packer fans is not to throw shade on them. I think it's more to highlight what they did great, and to show that they actually can improve on it if things go well. I really do believe that. But we can't just be cherry picking and be, glossy eyed Packer fans and not call out stuff. We always say, if you see something, say something. So that was kind of the point of this segment here. And I hope it opened it up. And I really do want you guys to go back and listen to it. It's 30 minutes of full on Packer content on a national podcast. And I love that type of stuff. And I thought that they did a great job, both the guys, of really getting to know the franchise and kind of seeing where we're at. I hate it when people will sit there and talk about a team's, future projection, where they see them and they pronounce it Romeo Dubs. And I'm like, you don't know this team, you don't know what you're talking about. And anyways, I thought they did a good job of that. So if you guys get a chance, go back again. It's the Athletic Podcast. I believe this episode dropped on Thursday. It's called Lingering Questions. If you started at about minute marker around 34, you'll get right into that Jordan Love section. So
got it. Yeah. And again, it doesn't mean that we all have to agree with what they say either. Don't take it the wrong way. Like, for instance, if they're talking about the offensive line not playing that good for a game or two, absolutely. But the reality is quarterback pressure percentage, according to Next Gen Stats, GPS tracking, and NFL Pro, Jordan Love had the 11th most time to throw. Quarterback pressure percentage, he was pressured 30.8% of the time of his dropbacks last year. That was 11th best in the league. So just keep that in mind as well. Like they're probably looking at the more recent games down the stretch too. Like, man, the offensive line kind of fell apart. It's why we said as soon as the Philly game was over, we better build some damn depth with this offensive line. We better have it. So, that's why we got to get Elton Jenkins a little more guaranteed money, get him into camp and get that taken care of there for sure. So, and it doesn't mean you're going to keep Elton for the next 3 years. I hear some people saying, give him a 4-year extension. I'm not on that. I'm not on board there. I'm simply saying, let's convert some base salary to signing bonus, give him a little bit more guaranteed money, have him for at least 2 more years. And if he looks like he can be a Jason Kelsey and play for a couple more years, then you extend him, right? And if he wants to hold out and thinks he needs a contract till he's 35, that's where we got a problem. And that's where you might want to buck up and say, hey, bub, you're just going to have to play on the contract you got and get your ass into camp, that type of thing. So let's go to the chat real quick, see what everybody's saying. Chris Casualian says, I think Good is questioning whether to pay Tom. Just my gut feeling. I don't know if he's questioning whether to pay him, Chris. And I think you're probably saying the same thing I'm thinking. It's how much. It's fair market value, right? Yeah. Like that $20 million, I don't think Goot would have a problem paying him $20 million average annual value. Now, you guys know that can be manipulated with the guaranteed money and the incentives and this and that, but it's kind of that median line. $30 million a year? No, Goody. I don't think Goody's interested in paying that personally. So I think we're on the same page there. J. Cole says, I'm not worried about J. Love scrambling. He was injured last year. I think we will scramble more this year. I completely agree. If you go back and watch the 2023 tape, he was a dog scrambling. Like there were so many plays that he made. I remember, I think it was it the Saints game or maybe the Vikings game? You remember the Vikings game? I think it was New Year's Eve where he dove over the goal line and landed on his head or whatever. Like my man was scrambling. Last year it was not there because of the injuries, no doubt.
Yeah.
Coach Lynn, a lot of time Tom has no tight end help. He's on an island. That's tough for any tackle. It's so true, Coach. And Tauscher and Bulaga talk about this all the time when they talk. It's like you can take an offensive, you can take an edge defender, and they can have a handful of good plays, and they're considered elite.
Yeah.
You can take the same offensive lineman that blocks those guys, and they can have just a handful of bad plays, and they're horrible. Right? Like offensive linemen, especially someone like Tom, because they did not give him chip help most of the time. They really didn't. So you're on an island, you're going to give stuff up. And Zach Tom played great. Don't get me wrong. But when you said that they mentioned against elite talent, against elite defenses, I noticed that as well. It was like, he's not there yet. He's still young too.
Yeah.
He was a fourth round pick. Yeah. So yeah, you got to put that into perspective. And I guarantee you Goody's looking at it that way too, because whether we like it or not, Brian Gutekunst and most, if not all GMs in the league, when a free agent becomes available, they're going to look at what they did in the league. But the very first thing they go to is the draft grade they had on that player. So at the end of the day, they love Zach Tom just like we do. I guarantee you they do. However, at the end of the day, Goody's also looking at a 4th round grade on him. It's not like one of these guys like a Jordan Morgan that we had a 1st round grade on that obviously got hurt last year. So just keep that in mind as well. H.E. Soder says, how limited was the Packers blocking scheme by Myers? Help had to flow inside. See, that's the other thing too, is you're probably getting, if you have a chip, if you have a tight end help and block, I can see it being something where Tom's a little more aware of a stunt inside where he can bend inside, but also you have the running back helping chip inside, then leak out. That type of thing. Sometimes we would pre-motion, we do a little cheat motion with the tight end to get him underneath and then yo-yo him back to help inside chip and then leak out and that type of thing. So I think you're spot on there as well. Good stuff though, Jacob. I'm glad you hit on all that, man. That was a good segment there for sure. So just a little Jordan Love talk. And again, go check that out, guys, and let us know in the comments what you thought about that pod that they put together. Now, in terms of, I will say this with Jordan Love before we move on. One of the things that we talk about is EPA and EPA per dropback for quarterbacks. That's like the advanced metric on how well a quarterback played. 3 injuries last year, right, that he battled through all year long. Starting in week 1, this wasn't something, he played like crap, and then week 8 he gets hurt. No, week freaking 1, he hurt his knee, right? He finished 13th in the league at a plus 0.07 EPA per dropback. He was borderline top 10 in EPA per dropback, even battling those 3 injuries all year long. So I think that is, it's important to be fair in that regard and mention that type of thing. So, all right, let's move it along to, let's talk a little coach game planning and a little X's and O's. Does that sound good, Jacob?
Yes.
All right. So here we go. Matt LaFleur was on the Chris Sims podcast, right? and I'm hoping I'm getting the right one. I think I've got it here. He was on the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast, and he was asked some great questions by Chris Sims. I just want to say Chris Sims done a hell of a job with this interview. Chris Sims being a former NFL quarterback, he was raised by a former NFL quarterback. This dude, whether you like him or not, whether you like his broadcast style or not, he made it to the highest level of football, right? And hearing him question an NFL coach, I thought these questions were fascinating. It's things that most people don't talk about. But let's kind of hit on it here and talk about and let's hear the first question that Chris Sims asked Matt LaFleur. And what he asked him here is it's about unscouted looks. You know, we've talked about Detroit may struggle because they got a new OC and a new DC, right? The reality is Matt LaFleur going into week 1 with Detroit coming to Lambeau, he has unscouted looks on these new OC and DC. Now, you would think if they hired from within, they would continue to do what they do. But the reality is defensive coordinators, even within the same system, have their little nuances, having things that they like to do. Let's see how Matt LaFleur answers the question, and we got a deep dive into unscouted looks. Here we go.
Known than the unknown. I'm just interested in your thought here. Yeah, it's great. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are gone, okay, because we know they're really good. But does that necessarily mean it's easier for you? I know NFL coaches. You guys kind of you'd rather the known than the unknown. And now you're going to go, wait, how are they attacking me with this new look? Does that make things a little more confusing with that week 1 matchup?
Oh, absolutely. You might as well throw all the tendencies out the window.
Right.
So,
right.
And I'm sure each coordinator is going to have his own wrinkle. And the bottom line is you just got to be ready to adjust in game. I think just generally speaking, going into week 1, there's going to be unscouted looks. So you better have a plan where your players are very comfortable that no matter what presents itself, that they're confident that they know the rules and can go out there and execute at a high level against. I mean, they're still one of the premier teams in the National Football League. I know they're losing 2 coordinators, but I've got so much respect for Dan Campbell and the job he's done. I think when you look at Detroit, they've totally taken on his personality.
Right.
You know, you're going to get a tough ass team, and they're going to try to punch you in the mouth for 60 minutes.
No doubt. Or as they say, maybe bite you in the kneecaps, do something like that for sure.
He got a lot of flack for that, but I mean, he's backed it up. So
yes, you're exactly right.
Goes to him.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
All right. So there you go. There was Matt LaFleur with Chris Sims on Chris Sims Unbuttoned talking about those unscouted looks. And here's what we're talking about when we talk about unscouted looks. All right. I said, I just put a little quick article together. I tried not to make it wordy at all, but it's up on the Patreon group. If you guys want to support the show and join our Patreon community, just go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access or scan the QR code in the upper right. With the ever-changing landscape of the NFL, one task coaches have to face is game planning against coordinators they've never faced before. So here's just a quick glimpse at the new staffs for each of the NFC North teams, that other than the Packers, of course. Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell's still the head coach. He's an offensive-minded coach. He played tight end in the league. We know that. Scotty Montgomery's the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach. John Morton is now the offensive coordinator. Kelvin Shepard is now the defensive coordinator. Dave Phipp is the special teams coordinator. You go on the Bears side, and you've got the former offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson, is now the head coach. He's going to be calling plays. Guess what? Everything you've seen from the Detroit Lions, that's your starting point for game planning the Chicago Bears this year, right? But when you go back to John Morton, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, theoretically, you'd think they want to continue to do what they do, and he was probably brought up in that system. I don't know his exact, coaching background or history. However, you got to be prepared for a new OC, new tendencies, right? The offensive coordinator for the Bears really doesn't mean that much. It's Declan Doyle because, again, Ben Johnson will be calling the plays. You want to key in on Ben Johnson's coaching history more than anything. Defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, right? He was with the Saints, if I remember correctly. I don't know where he was last year. I think he was with the Saints last year. Nonetheless, you're probably going to want to go back and start to study what the Saints did a few years ago with Dennis Allen. And go through this entire offseason and get prepared to play against that defense, as opposed to Matt Eberflus, who's been with the Chicago Bears as the defensive-minded head coach the last several years, okay? And then, of course, you get the Minnesota Vikings. You still got Kevin O'Connell. I think everything stayed the same here. I know Brian Flores is still the DC there. Wes Phillips is the OC. Mike Pettin is the assistant head coach.
Oh, that's tough. Hey, I did not know that Antoine Randall L was the Bears' assistant head coach. Did you?
Yeah. See, he came over from Detroit. That's one that Ben Johnson brung with him. And here's what's crazy is he's protected, right? Let's say they go out and made us ball out this year and Declan Doyle gets offered a job. If he gets offered a job somewhere as a head coach, I don't think he will, but let's say he does. Guess what? You promote Antoine Randall to OC, but he's also protected as assistant head coach as well.
It's like that lateral / move that's still considered a upgrade. Yeah, and like you said, Dennis Allen, he was with the Saints. He was also with Oakland. But
there you go. Got it. All right, so up next, we hit on Minnesota. Okay, so here's what we're talking about here. Let's talk about how you're trying to game plan against teams. And these numbers are going to be hard for you guys to see on the broadcast. I'll make sure that I kind of give you the gist of it right here. Every head coach puts their own spin on how they game plan, although they still approach it with a basic understanding of personnel tendencies and formational tendencies, okay? So when you look at the personnel tendencies here, I'll go full screen, make it a little easier. So when you look at this, what I did was I added in all the NFC North teams, the other 3 NFC North teams that are not the Green Bay Packers, obviously. We've got it sorted by rate in which they run specific personnels, okay? So 11 personnel for the Chicago Bears was ran more than any other personnel than any other coaching staff in the NFC North last year. They ran 11 personnel 71.7% of the time. If you're wondering what the hell is 11 personnel, it stands for 1 running back, 1 tight end, which equals 3 wide receiver sets. Why is that important? You've, as a defense, have got to decide how are we going to play 11 personnel. And 9 times out of 10, the way the NFL defenses play that is they march out their nickel defense. In our case, it's a nickel 4-2-5. You know, when we were under Joe Barry and the other 3-4, Joe Barry, Mike Pettin, all those guys, right? With a 3-4 defense, it was considered a 2-4-5, 2 down line or 2 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, 5 DBs. That's why it's called nickel, 5 equaling nickel, right? Now, with Jeff Hafley's approach, it's the same personnel. It's just called 4-2-5, and it's considered 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. But I'm telling you, in a 3-4, I used to harp on this all the time because people would say, we need more defensive linemen. After I'm going, Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith are defensive linemen. Quit kidding yourself. They're not linebackers, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just how it's approached because you're in a sub package of a nickel 4-2-5 or any kind of nickel for that matter the majority of the time because that team's running 11 personnel. But again, you're going out and you're game planning against Chicago. You're going, okay, boys, our nickel is going to be on the field the majority of the time. Who gives us the best opportunity to match up against the Bears specific roster, whether it's their 3 wide receivers, or the running back they're going to have underneath, or the tight end that they're going to have? Will they push more into 12 this year, what have you? The game plan is set that way. So they ran 11 71.7% of the time last year. Minnesota ran at 56.5% of the time. The Detroit Lions ran at 54.2% of the time. Now, it's worth mentioning the 4th most ran personnel in the NFC North last year was actually Detroit Lions running 12 personnel. So they were more balanced than anyone. So when you go in and you game plan against the Chicago Bears, you're going in thinking, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. Let's say it's the same coaching staff, right? You're going to go in and go, they're going to be in 11 personnel the majority of the time. Let's prepare our nickel 4-2-5 defense, right? Now, you go in to play Detroit, you got to be going, all right, boys, damn near 35% of the time at 32.2% a clip, we're going to be playing against their 12 personnel, which means we're going to be in our base 4-3. Whether they spread it out empty or not, we got to be prepared to stop the run in our base 4-3. Here's the twist. Now you've got Detroit's numbers are going to carry over to Chicago's numbers. So now you've got 2 teams in the NFC North that at least going into week 1, you got to be prepared for them to run more 12 personnel than anyone else in the entire NFC North. Now, second most 12 personnel is Minnesota Vikings at 24.7%. So I just wanted to start the conversation with that and saying personnel tendency is the first thing that coaches jump into. People play a lot of Madden nowadays, Jacob. They're all about the superstars, the players on the roster, and then which one's got the better player. Well, we need to stop that. But I'm telling you, this is how coaches begin their game plan right here, is by stopping personnel tendency. And if you go on down to the next metric we got, we're sticking with personnel tendency. Now we sorted it by EPA. What's this telling you? This EPA statistic is telling you this is what these teams did the best from an advanced metric standpoint, right? Expected points added in each personnel. So when you look at the Chicago Bears, they're leading the pack here at a positive 0.9 in EPA, right? But it's 12 personnel. Well, they only ran 12 personnel 0.1% of the time. So they were kind of shooting themselves in the foot, trying to force out 11 personnel. As you can see, that their 11 personnel doesn't even register on the top of this list here. right? Their next better one is.
Does that say the Lions with 13?
Hmm?
Does that say the Lions second with 13 personnel?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and EPA. That's right. Yeah. So, and here's the thing. When you go to a more of a base package, like a 12 or a 13 personnel, your success rate for doing what you're supposed to do is going to go through the roof. But again, you're not going to be able to hit home run plays, chunk plays, explosive plays out of a 12 and 13 near as much as 11 personnel. And again, the name of the game in the NFL is hitting explosive plays, passing plays of 20 yards or more, running plays of 10 yards or more. Some people will just couple them together, meet in the middle, and say any play over 15 yards or more is considered an explosive play. And when you hit on an explosive play, analytics, statistically speaking, suggests you triple your chances of scoring on that specific drive if you approach it that way. All right. So, yeah, with Detroit, they were second most efficient in terms of EPA out of their 13 personnel. Then the third most efficient offense at 0.52 EPA was the Detroit Lions' 10 personnel. 10 is one running back, no tight ends, meaning one running back, four wide receiver sets. And then you jump into that was 13 plus with Detroit. So those are the even heavier sets. Now we're into 13 personnel, true 13 personnel at positive 0.29. Minnesota Vikings come in. Their most efficient personnel was 22. The reason I'm pointing this out is you identify what personnel they're going to be in and then which personnel are they most effective with.
Real quick, when you say 13 plus, is that a situation where they've got multiple tight ends and also maybe like an extended tackle that's in a tight end instead? Okay.
What we refer to as jumbo set. Go back to the Kevin Berry days. U71 Bacon, right?
The U71. Yeah, that's what I remember.
So, and again, this is how coaches kind of set up their game plan. They're going in and we're looking for tendencies. And here's what's crazy, man. Across the league, these coaches will have, McCarthy was big on this, and I'm sure Matt LaFleur is as well. Coach McCarthy would have self-scouts. They would have guys in the building scouting themselves to make sure they were not being too predictable in terms of personnel tendencies as well as multiple play calling, all that stuff, right? So now let's go to formational tendency. Now you're looking at, and listen, the purpose of highlighting this, guys, and for everybody listening on the podcast, it's not to go, here's what everybody did well, here's what everybody did. It's to help everybody understand, here's how coaches approach game planning. That's all this is, okay? You can go look this information up yourself, right? And it's available here. I've got all these screen grabs in article form on our Patreon group where you have access to all this information, okay? So formational tendencies. Now we're talking about a 2x2 set being the one that was ran the most in the entire NFC North by the Minnesota Vikings. What's a 2x2 set? It means two wide receivers left, two wide receivers right, or two wide receivers left, a tight end and a wide receiver right, or vice versa. It just simply means two targets on the left, two targets on the right. Some people like to also include the running back if they're in a sidecar. I personally don't like to do that. I just wash the running back out of the equation is how I like to approach that because they're in the backfield and you're going to have underneath keys in your defense to trigger on those guys. So again, Minnesota Viking, 2x2 sets, 37% of the time. Detroit Lions ran 2x2 sets, 37% of the time. The Chicago Bears ran 2x2 sets, 36% of the time. You seeing a trend here, Jacob?
Yeah.
Everybody loves to attack defenses with 2x2 sets. So when you go into your game planning session, you now identify what personnel they're going to be in. Now you're identifying, you also identified what personnel they were most efficient in, and now you're identifying what formations they like to play out of, so you're not caught off guard. And that's why sometimes when you play a team and you beat their ass, and then you go back and play on the second time, you hear it all the time, it's hard to beat the same team twice in the same year because you're going out going, hey, we handled their 2x2 sets really well last time, right? And they're going in going, they beat our brains in with their against our 2x2 sets. Let's go with a little 1x3. Let's go with trips or a tray left or what have you. So, again, that's another way that they game plan.
When you're talking about these different formations and packages and all this kind of stuff, as much as we rolled our eyes and absolutely hated certain packages, I'll say maybe the jet sweep motion and certain end arounds and that sort of stuff, do you think it's fair of LaFleur to have to throw maybe 2 or 3, 4 of those plays in each game just to keep that defense honest and to keep them as you're just talking about now when teams are going through that tape and seeing, all right, we got to account for this. You know what I mean? Like that we just have to, whether or not we want to or think they're actually going to use it. Like they're setting us up with that jab. Eventually they're going to throw that right hook. Is that kind of, do you think coaches intentionally put in a play or a package where they know, like, I don't actually expect this to do anything, but it's going to keep the defense honest?
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about in the next segment how they dress up plays. And Matt LaFleur was asked about that by Chris Sims as well. That totally happens. Right? Totally happens. And you might just have a burner play where it's like, you know what, we're going to run a slip screen. Let's do it out of a Trey Wright look, knowing we're going to be playing a crap ton. I about cuss. I love football, man. I get so amped up. You know you're going to be playing a ton of 2x2. Well, let's throw in a Trey Wright, knowing we're going to slip screen to the left. And that's just kind of a burner play. Like, we know where the ball's going there. There's no read in the formation. It's we're going to slip in a screen here. Let's do that with a Trey look so it kind of keeps them guessing. Crap, they may run some Trey. We might be ready to adjust in that regard. And then you may, again, we'll talk about it in a minute, dressing up plays. You may start out in a Trey look, but end up by the time the ball snapped in a 2x2 set, right? So that comes into play. So you got to get down to the fourth. Most ran offensive formation of the Chicago Bears with a 1x3 set. That could be trips or Trey Wright. If it's 1x3, then it means one target on the left, 3 on the right. If there's a tight end attached, that's Trey. If it's all 3 wide receivers and the tight end's a nub left, then that's called trips right. Okay. So if it said 3x1, which you see the first 3x1 set comes in from the Detroit Lions here, 7th on the list at 16.9% of the clip. 3x1 means trips or Trey left with one target on the right. That's all that means. So you always work from left to right, whether it's the play call diagram and you identifying and communicating what the play is itself or the formational aspect. So now when you go to formation.
Can I just real quick say something? Yeah. I'm sure you maybe listened to it, but Greg Cosell was on the Ross Tucker podcast, I believe, within the last 2 weeks. And they were talking, I think, specifically about Savion Williams and Michael Golden, trying to see how they would fit and whether or not they were quote unquote an X and all this. And Greg Cosell, which obviously I don't have to tell you, Clayton, is the great GOAT, the living GOAT, as Tucker calls him. He was talking about how certain formations, certain sets are kind of moot because of how much pre-snap motion they can do nowadays. So you can take a 2x2, just simply throw a guy in motion and completely screw up that pre-snap motion or the pre-snap reads that they thought they had just with a single guy going in motion. And that kind of takes away a certain height and size limitations that you quote unquote, he's the X, he can't be out there. He's only 5'10", blah, blah, blah. It's
exactly.
like you literally just throw him inside on a short motion and that quote unquote problem's taken away.
There's a lot of factors that come in. They use it to identify man coverage, meaning if the guy follows that, okay, we're going from a 2x2 set to a Trey set after the cheat motion. It does multiple things. It gives the quarterback information. And even if they're in a zone, you can kind of pick up on which safety's diving into the box, which one's dropping deep. If they're in some kind of cover 3 match look, it also tells you if it's man coverage. It also gives your receiver an advantage because he's got a full sprint horizontally where he's going to be kind of running full speed as soon as the ball snapped, as opposed to just starting from a dead stop. There's a lot of things. We'll talk about that here in a second in the next segment. It's going to be awesome. Chase Green in the chat said, Clayton, I love your chalk talks. Do you agree that 21 personnel is better for short yardage? I like how we can run it or pass it out of that set. Absolutely. Here's the other thing you can do, Chase. You can come out at 21 personnel, right, which is 2 running backs, 1 tight end, therefore being 2 wide receivers. But if you've got Musgrave as your tight end, guess what you can do? You can come out with that 21 personnel, go pony package, and empty everything else out. Now you've got the tight end flexed out wide, and you've got a mismatch with someone like a Luke Musgrave who's got really good speed, but a 6'5" or a 6'6" frame, whichever tight end it is. They've got to decide, do we put a shorter backer on him that's going to have less speed as well, or do we put a safety on him? Because they're trying to match personnel. And that's where you get into some of the old school Greg Williams approach, the Mr. Bountygate guy down there with the Saints. That wasn't the only thing he did well down there, was putting bounties on players' heads in the game. He went to a dime set because he got tired of getting outmatched like that. And he knew it was a pass-heavy spread offense league there in the late 2000s, early 2010s, right? So all that. And again, the league's cyclical right now. As Chase is saying, 21 personnel has been kind of popular. However, it doesn't mean there's not more 11 personnel than everything else. But yeah, for short yardage, theoretically speaking, but what I really like to see is a 21 personnel and then empty it out. You want to watch a defense scramble. They come out in a base 4-3, and all of a sudden you're going in an empty gun set. They're going, what in the hell do we do with this?
Dude, and what about if one of the 21 personnel running backs is Savion Williams?
Exactly. And that's
you
can Jacob, you can now come out with a 10 personnel look, right? If you're Green Bay, let's say Savion is a hit, right? He's just they nailed this draft pick. You can come out with a 10 personnel look, flex Josh Jacobs, flex them both out wide. And now they're going, oh crap. All right. So we were in 10. We're already in our dime. We're good. We're good against the pass. They're in an empty. and then pre-snap motion Savion back into the backfield. And now you've got a more advantageous look for your offense because even though you're showing 10 and your running backs flexed out wide, let's say Josh Jacobs is flexed out wide too, you bring Savion the backfield. They got to decide, do we put a backer on Savion to help, that one linebacker? Because with a dime set, it's essentially 6 DBs and one linebacker with a 4 down line in front, right? So they got to decide, do we put a corner in the box now on Savion, or do we put a backer in there? And if they bring the backer in and you pre-motion him into the backfield, you come set, let Jordan read the play. Okay, cool. Holy cow, they got a backer on him. Let's bring Savion out of the backfield now. Now you've got a passing game mismatch with the wide receiver on a linebacker. And that's like still a Mountain Dew from a baby down here in Appalachia. I'm just telling you. So, all right, guys, time got away from us there. We're nerding out, obviously. So that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we'll see you on the other side for hour 2. We'll continue this.